Hi everyone, it's Darlene. Welcome back for another card. Today I did a watercolor using the butterfly set I bought recently called Jerry's Butterflies. I'm going to use the big butterfly and then one of the small ones, the one that's kind of flat out. I'm going to put them in my MISTI, stamp them with VersaFine Black Onyx ink, and then I'm going to take the small one, put it on a block, and stamp it one more time underneath that large butterfly. And I put my Stamp My Jig right there just in case I had to stamp it again, but I didn't have to. So I'm going to sprinkle this with some clear embossing powder, heat it to set it. Now I want these butterflies to be completely solid white. So I'm going to take my Versamarker and I'm going to color the whole thing in. So I'm just making sure that I get every area in all three of these butterflies. You don't have to do them one at a time. It'll stay wet long enough. And if you go over the black area, that's perfectly fine. It's just going to put more clear over the black. So once I cover all my butterflies, I'm going to take my clear embossing powder and sprinkle it all over it. Now you can see how great the embossing powder sticks with this Versamarker. It's just Versamark ink in a pen. So you can see how great the coverage is. So I will heat set this and you can see how shiny it is. But just for good measure, I decided to do it one more time so I got a really thick clear layer. And you can see it almost looks like enamel. It's really pretty. Now I'm ready to watercolor. I'm going to use one of those tried and true techniques with the distress ink on my craft mat. So I have three colors here. I'm going to start with the lightest. This is Squeeze Lemonade. And I'm just using the edge of my ink pad because I don't want a large area of color. I want a small area because I really just want the watercolor under my butterflies. So notice that I accidentally got some further down. So I'm just going to take a tissue and wipe it off my craft mat. It doesn't have to be exact. I just want to make sure that my area is pretty small. I'm going to spritz this with some water and then I'm going to carefully take my butterflies and make sure that I hit the center of my ink so that it just gets in the middle. So I'm going to press this down and then flip it over and take a look. Now I need more watercolor on the left side, so I'm going to put it back down in there. And I always get nervous about putting it in again, like I'm going to ruin it. So I fast forwarded all my waiting time when I determined if I was going to dip it one more time. I did decide to do a little bit more on the bottom, but I didn't like the way that turned out a little bit on the right. So I thought to be safe, I'm just going to pause for a second and dry this and see what I want to do. Now before I put the heat tool to it, I want to make sure that I wipe off any ink that's on top of my embossed area because it might actually stain the embossed area if I apply heat to it and there's color on it. So I'm going to heat this up quickly, and then I decided I definitely wanted a little bit more color, especially on that bottom butterfly. So I'm just going to use my two darker colors, the Picked Raspberry and the Ripe Persimmon. And I don't know why I spread them out so much, but I'm going to spritz that with water, and then I'm going to place try to aim the bottom butterfly to go into my ink. You can see how nervous I am about this. And I really like that. There's kind of a line there, so I dipped it one more time. And also notice I'm going to put the whole thing back in there, just tap it in so I get a lot of those water droplets. It looks kind of messy, but I'm actually really liking this, especially since I have a lot of white area around it and not the whole panel is covered with the watercolor. All right, so I'm going to wipe off my color again and heat set it, and now I'm done. I'm just going to use it like this. I decided to add a little more interest to the background by adding some faded butterflies. I'm going to use the Picked Raspberry and the Ripe Persimmon to just stamp off, and this ink doesn't stamp off very well, so you really are going to get a very faded image. Not like Stampin' Up! Where you stamp off and you get kind of a different color. So I'm just going to randomly place them so that they look like they're behind the bright butterflies. And this is my finished watercolor panel. Now I'm going to trim this so that I have a 1/16 of an inch border on all sides, so not very wide. There's a little scripty hug sentiment from my Sketchy Rose set by Altenew, so I'm going to use that with some Versamark ink, and I'm going to put it kind of in the lower right-hand corner. And then I'm going to put some Tombow Mono Multi Glue all over the back of this watercolor piece because it is warped, but it's Canson XL mixed media paper, and it's very thin, so it usually takes the shape of the cardstock I adhere it to. So I'm going to stick it down there and use my acrylic block to lay it flat for a little bit and let it dry. So maybe like 5 or 10 minutes. And then I'll take my block off and I am finished. So that is the card for today. Really, really shiny butterfly in the middle of this kind of messy watercolor, but I actually really like the way it turned out. Anyway, I hope you did too, and I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.